Welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John. I'm here to do another end of the year special presentation wrap up. We're going to get into a top 10 list, and I'm a little late on this one, but there's a little bit of a reason why. I was trying to squeeze in as many more stinkers as I could so that I could get you the most accurate list for 2025 in worst movies. Because the good movies, I'm always right out the theater to see. But when I know certain ones are bad, I delay and delay and delay on watching them. In fact, I just delayed watching Bambi the Reckoning thinking it was going to make this list. And my disclaimer on the top 10 worst movies of 2025 is this. 1. Last year I had my top 11 because like I said, I was watching extra ones to try and see what would fit, and I added one more. Well, believe it or not, the same thing happened again. Even though I was trying to watch certain other movies that I thought would make the list, I thought I was going to have a top 12. Or if I had too many on the list, I was going to just make some of them honorable mentions. But with it being 11, we're not going to have any honorable mentions. We're just going to go into all 11. Just remember, this list is subjective. It's my opinion. It's the way these movies made me feel. And the only other thing I'll say is, some of these movies are on the list based on how terrible they are, or how terrible I felt watching them, or how bored I was watching them. But also, sometimes my expectation of what the budget, the studio, maybe certain more experienced directors should kind of know better not to be on this list so high. Even though I will give the low budget, inexperienced people making movies a little bit of a leeway, at the end of the day, it still does come down to the product given. And if it's really bad and I didn't like it, I'm just going to have to call it what it is. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 11, released in December of 2025, Five Nights at Freddy 2. This movie was directed by Emma Tammy. It stars Josh Hutcherson, Piper Rubio, and Elizabeth Lail. 1 year after the supernatural nightmare of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, Abby runs away to reconnect with her animatronic friends, uncovering dark secrets about the true origins of Freddy's and unleashing horrors that have been hidden for decades. So in 2025, I started to realize, and more as we roll into the beginning of 2026, I'm starting to not be a fan of video adaptation game movies. And Five Nights at Freddy seems to be like one of those franchises that were designed specifically for fans of the game. And those people who aren't fans of the game, i.e. me, might get lost in space because of Easter eggs, references, gameplay scenes that you're just not really sure why everyone else in the theater is having such a grand old time. And that was pretty much what it was like for me watching Five Nights at Freddy 2. Besides the fact that it was a very basic story, kind of just an extended rehash of the first movie, which I thought was basic as well. For me, Five Nights at Freddy 2 was more about my taste and just not liking this specific storyline as compared to the movie itself was technically okay. Another thing that disappointed me about Five Nights at Freddy 2 was how they used Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich's characters. They seem to be in it minimally, and I just thought the characters that we learned or come to know as Ghostface, to be honest, I felt like this franchise and this movie specifically was a step down for them. Coming in at number 10, released in June of 2025, Into the Deep. This movie was directed by Christian Sesma. It stars Scout Tyler Compton, John Cena, and Richard Dreyfuss. Pirates on the hunt for sucking drugs kidnap a boat of tourists and force them to dive into shark-infested waters to retrieve their contraband. So at the beginning of last summer, I started getting excited, as I do always in June, looking forward to certain shark movies that were released onto streaming and other ones that were released into theater. And the first one I came across was Into the Deep. And when I found out that Scout Taylor Compton, the girl from Rob Zombie's Halloween who played Laurie Strode, and Richard Dreyfuss, Matt Hooper himself from Jaws, was in this movie, I had my hopes up quite high and thought this movie was going to be worth a watch. After watching it, and I discovered it started a trend that I started to get annoyed with movies having sharks and criminals and not just sharks, it became very distressing because in this one specifically, the criminals seemed to take the front seat and the shark seemed to take the back seat. And also with this movie, the shark didn't seem to be as vicious. It seemed like the real villains in the movies were the criminals, and the shark almost was helping them get away. One thing that adds to what I really didn't like about it was how the movie ended. You know, when you go to a creature feature, you kind of want to see him defeat the creature. And in this one, the shark just swims up to Scout Taylor Compton, looks at her in a kind of weird way, almost smiling, while there's all these other little fishes in the background which look like the cast of Nemo. And then she just smiles back and the shark swims away. The end. And I thought, what an anticlimactic, dumb ending for a shark movie. And compared to movies like Dangerous Animals, Fear Below, and Great White Waters, this was the worst shark movie of last year. Coming in at number 9, released in December of 2025, Begonia. This movie is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. It stars Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, and Aidan DeBeese. Two conspiracy-obsessed young men kidnap a high-powered CEO of a major company, convinced that she is an alien intent on destroying planet Earth. So every year when I make this list, I always seem to find myself picking one that will be divisive and getting people in the comments saying, what is wrong with you? Why are you picking this movie? Well, and last year it was The Substance. Well, this year it's Begonia. And for me, it was definitely a matter of taste of how this movie was executed, what the story was. I think for me the biggest thing was I wasn't a fan of the characters. The two guys that kidnap her, one was kind of seemed slow and special, so he was okay. I mean, of the three of them, he was my favorite. Then the other guy who seemed to be calling the shots, who seemed to be dragging this other guy around and getting him into all this business, creating all these conspiracy theories, I just wasn't a fan of him. Maybe it was because he was a jerk or the way he treated his cousin or brother. I forget how they were related. And then you have Emma Stone, who plays this high CEO. And she was another one that was strange. And I thought the basic premise of this was neat. That's why I decided to watch it, especially after hearing some other YouTubers raving about this movie.
Your hair has been destroyed to prevent you from contacting your ship.
What ship?
Your mothership?
Okay. In the next 48 hours, the police and the FBI will begin a statewide manhunt. I'm a high-profile female corporate executive. I am crucial. In all humility, I can say that. Think of it like you abducted the governor, but worse. There is no possible scenario where you benefit from this incident.
And I am going to try to keep this list spoiler-free, but I think another thing that I really wasn't a fan about in Begonia was I didn't like how it ended. I was expecting it to go one way, thinking that it was going to be a happy ending, and then it goes in a completely other different way. Sometimes that can be a good thing, and I guess sometimes that's a bad thing. For me, in this one, it was pretty rough. And I don't think I could even sit through this one again for a second time watch to give it another chance. But who knows? I still haven't given The Substance a chance, and I might. Coming in at number 8, released in March of 2025, Borderline. This movie was directed by Jimmy Warden. It stars Samara Weaving, Ray Nicholson, and Eric Dane. A bodyguard protects a pop superstar and her athlete boyfriend from a determined stalker in 1990s Los Angeles. With this one, I was getting intrigued because I thought with Samara Weaving and the son of Jack Nicholson, Ray Nicholson, the guy who just impressed me by being in Smile 2 the year before, were our main stars. And Nicholson was going to be this crazy stalker type, and it was going to be a horror comedy. I guess for this one, it all came down to the execution, because I don't think I laughed all but maybe once, and it was probably I laughed at how terrible Samara Weaving sang her one song with this other girl in the movie. This one was predictable. I think for me, it's just not one joke landed. I didn't have any interest in any of the characters. Eric Dane's character, I guess, was a little bit okay, but his acting wasn't the best. He wasn't connecting with the child in this movie, and I just felt like I wasn't getting what was the real point of this even being like a horror comedy.
Tonight is the night. I'm proposing. We've been through this before. You don't know Sophia.
You're hilarious, Sophia.
I'm ready to be yours forever.
We're gonna be married?
What, are you having second thoughts?
I have a surprise for you.
I think for a movie like Borderline, I probably would have liked it better if it leaned more into the horror and stayed less out of the comedy. Oh yeah, and there was that other scene that I laughed at where there was a cop doing this funny dance until someone walked by. Other than that, this movie was a real stinker. Okay, that was our bottom four. Now we're going to get into the middle four, and I am going to say these middle four are kind of lumped together. And it's because they're all come from the same type of movie. Once you hear the first one, you'll realize what the rest might be. However, before we get into the middle four, I just want to say the bottom four were mostly veggie burgers. So you're going to see an increase in dislike as we go into the next batch. Mainly because those were veggie burgers, and for a lot of those it just was a matter of my taste. In this next batch, I feel like it's just the overall quality of movies. So with no further ado, let's get into the top 7. Coming in at number 7, released to Tubi in July of 2025, Hook!
Your voice went there.
Hasn't aged a day.
What have you done to her?
Nothing yet.
I know you're trying to do what's best for me, but no?
James Hook, he's back.
So this was one that came out in the middle of last summer, and I saw that it was a public domain. I almost wasn't going to watch it, but the cover looked decent, and I thought I wanted to try and give some of these public domain slashers more of a chance. And I thought, with I Know What You Did Last Summer coming out shortly after that, I wanted to get myself into a Hook type of mood. So I watched this one, and it was a real spam. It was terrible, and I think the biggest reason was it was trying to be like a Friday the 13th camp slasher, but it just wasn't executed well. The characters were terrible, the acting was horrible, the killer wasn't that scary, and the story was so basic I just didn't even care. The only thing I remember that was redeemable a little bit about it was this one scene of 2 girls getting killed in like a sauna, which reminded me of the 2 girls in the Final Destination 3 who got burnt up in the tanning station. I felt like this one could have been done a little bit better. I feel like with Captain Hook as the killer, it could have been similar to Popeye, because with it being a big, large, looming man, you would have more of a scary feeling as compared to little teddy bears and little mice and all the happier characters that Disney has put into public domain. Coming in at number 6, released in February of 2025, another public domain slasher, Popeye's Revenge. This movie was directed by William Steed. It stars Emily Mogler, Connor Powles, and Danielle Ronald. Basic plotline. The legend of Popeye haunts a group of camp counselors as they intend to open a summer camp. So this is another public domain one, similar to Hook, and it literally was the same exact movie, except for instead of the slasher being Captain Hook, this time it was Popeye. It took place in a campground, And I felt like of all these ones, this was like probably the most generic. I barely, honestly, I can barely even remember it. It was so long ago, but I just remember it gave me just a very boring and terrible feeling. The kills were generic, and I mean some of them were a little gory, but it was just there was no intensity to them. There was no tension leading up to the kills. I felt like compared to Popeye the Slayer Man, which I felt like was actually executed half well and made my top 10 most surprising list, in comparison to this one was just a disaster. The characters were less likable, the Popeye was less threatening, and it basically was a repeat of other movies that were just been released. Coming in at number 5, released in January 25, Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. This movie was directed by Scott Chambers. It stars Megan Placido, Martin Portlock, and Kit Green. Wendy Darling strikes out in an attempt to rescue her brother, Michael, from the clutches of the evil Peter Pan. Along the way, she meets Tinkerbell, who will be seen taking heroin, believing that it is pixie dust. Okay, even after reading that synopsis, I thought, oh my god, how dumb. And this movie was another one that just was poorly executed. I just couldn't get with the characters. I felt like, at least with Hook's a better antagonist, a better slasher. But Peter Pan, he just wasn't doing it. And it seemed like there was multiple antagonists in this one. And, I mean, from what I remember with it, it was, they get kidnapped and taken into his house. It didn't even feel like much of a slasher. It felt like more of a kidnapping, torture movie. And the whole Tinkerbell thing, doing heroin. I mean, how lame is that? I mean, it's movies like this is why I can't stand the public domain even existing.
So if you need a hand...
Wow. Who wants to come to Neverland with me?
I also thought the design of Peter Pan was kind of annoying. I didn't find him too scary. He just looked ugly and not like grimacing. I'd rather someone look scary. Even if they're ugly, they can still be scary, but this just seemed weak. And this was another one where the acting was really rough. So, I mean, some of these public domains, you kind of expect that. Some of these lower budgets, you definitely expect that. This one was just terrible to even get through. So glad when the credits finally rolled. And after that, I didn't watch public domains for like another 3 months. Coming in at number 4, released in May of 2025, Mouse of Horror. This movie is directed by Brendan Patrizio. It stars Louis Santer, Stephen Staley, and Chris Lanes. In a seaside town, chaos erupts as Dr. Rupert's monstrous creation stalks the night, harvesting body parts for a sinister purpose. No one is safe. Maybe it's just because I love Mickey Mouse so much, but this one was bad. And I think it comes down to execution mostly because I didn't have any interest in the way this Mickey was going. Now, I will say this. I gave Screamboat a good review. It made my most surprising list. And then Mousetrap from the year before was at the top of the list for worst movies of 2024. This movie is a couple steps up above Mousetrap because I feel like this movie had a little bit more of an effort. It did seem overall like a complete project. However, I still wasn't a fan of the way this mouse was. I felt like he was trying to be Terrifier, even though this came off more like just a spin-off to Winnie Pooh Blood and Honey, because Winnie the Pooh is in this movie as well, and I wasn't expecting him to be in this. I feel like some of the guys who were involved with Winnie the Pooh Blood and Honey were also involved with this. This one also just seemed to be a bizarre storyline. You had the dad that was with his daughter, and then she gets involved with all these people. in this factory, and the mouse is running around just killing people randomly, and his kills, I felt like it was just executed in a poor way where there wasn't much tension. And the mouse tried to behave like Terrifier, being all the way he would move, but he just wasn't scary. And at the end of the day, I found it to be the worst of all the public domains in 2025.
Let's see who can find the best body parts by midnight.
What? What?
Okay, so the middle four is done, and that was a rough batch to get through. I should say there was definitely a rough batch of movies to get through. Now we have the top three. Now, some of these titles might be a little bit more familiar to some of you guys because some of these were in the theater, and I feel like these should have had more performance in them, at least two of the three up here, because of the studios and people behind them. And they still managed to be worse than some of the public domains. Coming in at number 3, released in April of 2025, Hell of Summer. This movie is directed by Billy Burke and Finn Wolfhard. It stars Adam Pally, Rosebud Baker, Fred Hechinger. The counselors of a summer camp are terrorized by a mass killer. Yes, even IMDb isn't that impressed with this movie because that is the most basic premise plotline that I've seen on their website. So I walked into this one thinking, alright, it was listed as a horror comedy slasher. I thought it would be good enough. I always love a good slasher. You know, and this movie, when I did my review, I basically said it was kind of a breakdown or maybe a little bit of the dollar store version of Scream and Friday the 13th. So when you have movies that are playing around in those types of big franchises with those type of themes and those types of expectations, this one just couldn't even come close to what those movies are. I felt like it was definitely the execution, and I think that these are the kids that were in Stranger Things, it ended up being a huge disappointment. Mainly because I couldn't stand these characters. I thought the head counselor was dumb. He was terrible. He got everything he deserved. I thought the killer reveal was awful. It was just so blasé and stupid. And I thought the characters in this movie were dumb as well. There was such a dumb plot line of they could have escaped and they didn't. They went to a Ouija board to talk to characters that were murdered earlier in the movie. I just thought, wow, are you serious?
No one knows what we're dealing with here.
I know how we could get some answers. Everybody, join hands together. We're gonna bless the board.
I don't fuck with ghost shit.
Do you fuck with getting brutally murdered outside?
The killer is someone that we all know. The killer is...
And I just wasn't a fan of the kills or the way the killers operated when they were masked. They never seemed scary. There wasn't much lead up to the kills, so you see someone about to die, you thought maybe they'd have a few minutes, but no, it was quick kills, no intensity, and just a boring plot line and unlikable characters. Coming in at number 2, released in May of 2025, Field of Screams. This movie was directed by Alex Mode and Evan Runkle. It stars Jessica Shepard, Bill Russell, and Justin Mixon. A group of young people who are helping their friend clean out his late grandfather's farmhouse are terrorized by a living scarecrow who has its own stake in his dead creator's property. Okay, well this is one that I was really trying to... I don't even know how this one doesn't make number 1. I mean, technically this is the worst made movie of the year. I mean, this movie was filmed badly. It was acted terribly. Probably the worst acting that I've seen all year. The story was so bizarre and weird. I mean, I thought the very basic premise of a scarecrow being the antagonist, but these scarecrows were like slow and stupid. They walked dumb. There was no intensity to them. They were multiplying. There was just so much stupidity with this story as far as the one scarecrow was put down. I don't know how you kill a scarecrow, but then it was brought back by stuffing hay in its belly. I just remember roasting it in my review, thinking, oh my god, how the heck did this even get streamed? And I think the other thing that made this one terrible, besides it not being scary and very boring, but the characters were extremely dislikable. I just, for the protagonists were these two gay guys that bickered the whole time. I just complained about this in another movie where the characters were rude to each other, and it didn't make no sense. It didn't make no sense how these people acted. I think this is one of those ones that had I not been a YouTuber, I probably would have turned it off after the first 15 minutes. It just, there's nothing desirable about this film. And, I hate roasting it this hard, but I was just bored to tears with it. I'm no filmmaker or director or even actor. I have made my own films, so I guess I am a little bit of a filmmaker. But, I feel like some of the films I've made with zero experience, zero time, and not much talent wasn't much worse than this movie. And I just think if you're gonna get one that's gonna get put into stream or get put into theaters, you have to put in just a little bit more effort than this. Coming in at number 1, released in September of 2025, The Strangers Chapter 2. This movie was directed by Rennie Harlan. It stars Madeline Petch, and it is the middle chapter in the Strangers trilogy where Maya is being chased the entire time by the masked strangers. Okay, so this one might have been made technically better than the one right below it. And there are some interesting film choices in this one, but I felt like it suffered from being the middle child in a trilogy where it didn't have a solid beginning, it didn't have a solid ending. It was just a connecting tissue to a front and an end of the whole idea. And this connector wasn't that strong because it really was, the whole movie was just an extended chase scene with flashbacks of the strangers. And I have an entire review, which I do recommend you guys watching that review because I feel like I really give The Strangers Chapter 2 a funny and good roast. I enjoy watching that review more than the actual movie. Compare this to the movie I just put at slot number 2. I mean, those were inexperienced people. This movie has a major director directing it. It has actresses that are known, that are in other things, that are in it. I felt like there's a giant company, Lionsgate, behind it that has put all this time into 3 movies. And since Strangers Chapter 3 has already now been released, and I've reviewed and watched that as well, and I now know the entire storyline, it just makes The Strangers Chapter 2 even worse because it was the worst in the trilogy and it was the worst from last year. I even watched it a second time getting ready for Chapter 3. Most of these movies on this list I did not watch twice. We'll just say this one thing, and I said it in my review of Chapter 3. I felt like the Strangers trilogy had a good story in it somewhere. But it was lost in the execution and in the fact that they developed a story about strangers, taking away the fact that they're not strangers anymore by the time it was all said and done. And I've noticed that this movie, The Strangers Chapter 2, has been on many people's lists for worst of the year. Well, for me, it's number 1. Well, that's it. These are the stinkers from 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed the list. Maybe there's some movies in here that you'll avoid if you see them in the future somewhere. Or maybe you'll watch them. Maybe you'll like them. I don't know. Put your responses in the comments to what you think of my list. Or put movies you thought were terrible in 2025 or any terrible stinker movies that maybe I should avoid going forward. Well, this is Johnny with Good Burgers Reviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, all that jazz, because we still have upcoming end of the year presentations still coming. Horror Academies, which I plan to have released on or before March 15th, because that's when the Academy Awards are. Also, potentially I will be doing horror movie deaths ranked for 2025. And you can also expect more reviews of upcoming movies as we get into March, April, and the summer of 2026. This is Johnny with Good Burgers, signing off.